everyone, and welcome to the den again, back with another pressure canning video. And today we are canning beef stroganoff. Almost said beef stew, not beef stew, beef stroganoff. This is an excellent meal in a jar, so I'm gonna walk you through the process on how I do it. So let's get started. Okay, so the ingredients that I'm going to be using for my beef stroganoff are beef, onions, mushrooms, and I have some just white mushrooms here, and my onions. I sliced up 3 onions. I have minced garlic and Worcestershire sauce. I don't add any tomato paste to mine or any other seasonings. I will do that afterwards. You will also need beef stock or beef broth, and that will be heating up on my stove, and we'll use that at the end to get to our liquid headspace line. After you have canned this up, it will be very liquidy, just like when you make beef stroganoff at the beginning of the beef stroganoff process before you add your cream of mushroom soup. It's very liquidy when you're using, at least if you make it like me and you have some beef broth in there to begin with to get the flavors with the Worcestershire sauce and the garlic, and then at the end you thicken. So I will add cream of mushroom soup to that, as well as sour cream at the end after when I'm cooking it, when I'm making it for dinner. And then we like to eat our beef stroganoff over egg noodles, but it's also good over rice or mashed potatoes. Whatever you like best, use that. Now, if you wanted I always say that if you can get different meals out of the same jar, because we're just using beef, onions, and mushrooms, right? So it will have a distinct flavor with the Worcestershire sauce, but it's still really good. And you can use it in different ways. So if you wanted to thicken your sauce with flour or a cream of mushroom or something, you could definitely do that and then eat it with like a over easy egg. That's really good. When I do grilled steak bites, we always eat like an over easy egg on ours. So just thinking of different ways that you can use this, beef and noodles, anything like that would be really good. So that's what I try to do. I try to think of different ways. Like my chicken noodle soup recipe is so versatile. I love that recipe so much because you can use it as chicken and rice, chicken and noodles, chicken pot pie. It's just something that it's a starting point and you can take it wherever you want. And I think the same thing about this recipe, so I like to have this canned up. Okay, so let's get these jarred up. The first thing I'm gonna do is I'm going to add the meat to my jar because my scale ran out of batteries and I don't have batteries for it, so that's great. Normally I would use a scale, but that's not happening today. So I'm gonna eyeball it. We're just gonna add the meat. I dislike the smell of meat. It's really not appetizing. The next ingredient that I'm going to add, now that I have all my beef in my jars here, is my garlic. And I'm gonna do about half a teaspoon to 3/4 of a teaspoon of minced. If you were using whole clove garlic, just use 1 clove, or however much garlic you like. That's fine. I mean, some of this stuff you can, like spices and things, you can add to your flavor profile. All right, and the next ingredient that I'm going to add is my Worcestershire sauce, and I'm going to add 2 tablespoons.
Hey, Mom. Hey, Mom.
So next ingredient, 1/2 cup of onion. Just shove it in there. And then if you have a little extra left over, I have a little bit, I'm just going to add it to the jars. And then you're going to do 1/2 cup of mushrooms. Just going to smush it in there. I think I'm going to skip the funnel. These are going to shrink a lot. So the onion and the beef and the mushrooms. So I'm going to shove them in there. You can always add more onion and mushroom if you wanted to, even when you're cooking this. And the last thing that you're going to be adding is your beef stock or your beef broth. You want to get that as close to your liquid headspace, your headspace line as you can. And the next step is you're going to take your debubbler and you're going to go around each side of the jar and down the middle. Kind of give that stuff a shove back in there. And you're going to have to probably adjust your headspace, your liquid level, because it will settle in between all those little nooks and crannies. And my tool has the notches on the end so you can measure your headspace. The top notch up here tells me that's the 1-inch headspace, so I know that we're good. And I'm going to do this to all of my jars. Okay, so now we have our vinegar wipe, and we're going to wipe our rims. Make sure there's no cracks, cuts or blemishes in your rims. Get those nice and clean so that we can create a really good seal. And next thing, we're going to put our lids on. Next, you put your bands on. And to tighten your bands, it's just with your fingers. And that's it. Now let's get our canner loaded up. Okay, and there we have it. 7 quarts loaded up. I'm going to grab my lid. Make sure you look through the little vent pipe. Make sure you can see through it. Then my canner has arrows. You're going to line up arrow to arrow. Let it seat into place. Give it a twist. Check your little pipe here. Make sure that it moves freely so it doesn't get caught. This has got caught before on me. That's no good. So now we are going to wait for this to come to a vent. And when it gets to a vent, you're going to have a steady flow of steam here. So when we get to the vent process, I'll come back, show you what it looks like, and we'll set our timer. Okay, so we're at the vent stage now, and what you're looking for is for a steady, constant flow of steam to be coming out of this pipe. What you're doing at this point in the game while you're venting is replacing the air in the canner with steam, so that when it's processing, it's at the right temperature and that steam is in the pressure once you put your weight on is what's going to cook that enough and at a higher level than, like, say, just cooking it in a pot would do. So right now I have my timer set for 10 minutes. That's how long I need it to vent. And as soon as the 10 minutes is up, we'll come back and put our weight on the vent pipe, and then we'll go from there. Okay, so our 10-minute vent stage is done, so I'm going to put our weight on top. And right now, all we're going to do is, my heat's at about medium, and I'm just going to wait for my pressure gauge to reach 13 pounds of pressure. And once that happens, I can start my timer. Now, this is a dial gauge canner, so your pressure point may be different than mine. So pressure goes by elevation, so just know what your elevation is, and that way you will know what it should be in your canning book, for your canning guide, your canner guide, or in any of the ball books, you can find that information. So I'm at 5,000 plus feet, so my pressure point is going to be 13. So I will start my timer as soon as it gets to 13 pounds of pressure, but not before then, so I'll bring it back once it gets to the 13 pounds. Alright, so you can see there on my dial gauge that my pressure is at between 13 and 14 right now. Let me come over here, the lighting will be a little better. So I have started my timer for 90 minutes. These are quart jars, they contain meat. So you're going to need a 90-minute processing time. So that's all you do right now. And while your jars are processing, this is going to continue to climb. It probably will get past 15 at some point, but I like to keep it around 15. That way, if it fluctuates down some, I'll have time to adjust heat and before it will fall under. You do not want your pressure to fall underneath where it's supposed to be for your elevation. If your pressure falls underneath, you will have to get it back up to pressure and restart your timer, and we don't want to do that. So I am going to let this do its thing. It will regulate. Once it's regulated, it's pretty much going to stay pretty close to where you want it to be. But I always just keep an eye on mine every 5-10 minutes or so and make sure that my pressure still looks good. So this is a dial gauge canner, so my weight is a 15-pound weight. That's all that comes with this style of canner. So it won't start to do the until it gets 15 or more. So I know that when it starts doing that, I can adjust my heat and turn it down a little. Now when you are adjusting heat with your canner, you do not want to do it a lot. You just want to adjust it in small increments. So my kind of sweet spot is it's right past the medium on my dial. But as you use your canner more, you'll get to know it better and know where to kind of have your heat. So I find that with pint jars, it gets hotter in there for some reason with pint jars than quart jars. Maybe because I always double stack. I'm not really sure why. But anyways, I'm not going to let this go under 13. And then I'll probably keep it. It's fine to go over. Just don't let it go under. So that's the biggest thing. Don't let your pressure fall underneath where it needs to be. And let it process the whole entire 90 minutes. And then once it's done processing and that 90-minute timer has turned off, or gone off, then just turn your heat off. And that's all you have to do at that point. Just turn your heat off. So when my timer runs out, I'll bring you back. Okay, so my timer has expired. So all I did was turn the heat off, and I'm just going to leave it just like this. I'm not going to touch anything right now. I'm going to wait for this to go all the way to 0 and for this here to drop down. Once that happens, we'll come back, we'll remove our weight, and we'll see what's inside. Okay, so the pressure has come all the way down. This valve has dropped. The canner is still very, very hot because it has only been about, I don't know, maybe an hour, hour and a half since I turned the heat off. My pressure gauge is down to 0. So I'm gonna remove this, make sure no steam comes out, no steam's coming out. So you know it's safe to remove your lid at this point. Now you wanna always kind of, if you can, pull up and away from your face, but I can't, so I'm just gonna move it over to the side quickly. It's very steamy, and they look good. I'm gonna let them sit in here for a few minutes before I take them out. They are bubbling. They are bubbling in there. I don't know if you can see it or not, but some of them are bubbling. See that right there, maybe. And there is some siphoning in there that I can see, but I do expect siphoning sometimes. So, like I said, I'm gonna let this sit in here for about 5 minutes and then we're gonna remove them. Okay, so I have my jar lifter here and I'm just gonna remove my jars. So here they are, all out of the canner, still bubbling, but that's okay. I just heard a pop, so I know one of them is sealed, or sealing. We'll check them tomorrow to make sure. Okay, so that's gonna do it for me today, and I hope that you enjoyed this video. If you did enjoy this video, I would like to ask you to please subscribe, give me a big fat thumbs up, and leave a comment if you'd like. Otherwise, my beef stroganoff is all canned up. They look good. And tomorrow, the only thing I'll do is I'm gonna let them sit here and just rest all night. And tomorrow morning, I'll wash them. The jars look pretty clean, but I'm gonna give them a quick wash, date them, and write what's in them on the lid. And I will put them away in my pantry. So again, please like, subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video.